Everybody, it is September 16th, 2025, here with your after hours recap. So, ultimately, I don't think that the market did much wrong today. We do have the potential quarter point cut, and it looks like that's going to be what ends up happening. The quarter point cut tomorrow, what happens before then? Do we sell off all day before that happens and then ramp back up? Do we ramp before that decision and then sell off and, kind of shake around? But ultimately, I thought stocks acted fairly well. Tesla did get a little bit short-term extended, right? 3 massive up days in a row. Still finished green yesterday. But today just kind of, started to ramp right back up. A very subtle gap up from the close to the open. And then just kind of grinding higher today, not really doing much wrong. You could look at another name. I thought TEM was another one of these where it's like you have a few down days in a row. Right at the open, you're kind of starting to wash out in the morning, but then right off of the 200 EMA on a 60-minute chart, and then just a pop right back from those levels. I thought Hood was acting completely fine today, so really nothing wrong with that. And it's like you're seeing, there are some names, and we can kind of touch upon them that are a little bit extended in terms of price and could probably use a new base and could look for an excuse to sell off at any moment. But ultimately, stocks acted fairly well as you would like them to. I mean, maybe Nvidia with a touch of weakness, maybe Microsoft with a touch of weakness, and I think that that's totally fine so long as there continue to be themes in the market that are working. Banks continue to be a theme that's working. Maybe not every single semiconductor was up today, but you look at a name like ALAB and it just continues to be a leader. You look at a name like Reddit, continues to act, really well. Obviously, we just talked about Tesla, even OKLO today, and we can kind of touch on my CCJ as well. But, I own OKLO, and I trimmed some off yesterday, and then today you're kind of getting the, you get this 5-day ramp, basically, and you get a bit of a pullback today, but then you go and you close green on the day. And then CCJ, unfortunately, just sold off all day. And then as soon as we started breaking the 5-day, I took off half my position. I don't want to, watch this thing potentially go red on me. So I was like, okay, let me just take a little bit off, kind of trim the weeds and keep the flowers. And OKLO ended up acting a whole lot better. So I didn't do anything more with that one. And then on the flip side, you just you gotta know when to cut some off. And it was more just kind of protecting my downside effectively. But, the market, when you look at something like ARK, just pushing out of this little flat base looks great. I added to it last week, and it just did a really nice job kind of breaking that little flat base, new 52-week highs. Obviously, Tesla is a big contributor in that, but there are other names too that Kathy owns that are acting really well. Something like CRISPR acting very well. We just talked about TEM, another one that's acting well. For a moment there, even Coinbase had like some news with Google and stablecoin, if I'm not mistaken, something to that effect. I don't exactly know what, but Bitcoin was perking up. So you continue to build out this base here just underneath the 50. If you reclaim the 50, game on for Coinbase, and I would look to try and get myself repositioned in that name if we can kind of reclaim the 50 days. So ultimately, I don't think that there was a ton wrong with the market. JP Morgan, new all-time high today. That's nice to see. So the banks continue to act well. It will be interesting to see, if other sectors like solar and a few of them were acting pretty decent today. Sedge wasn't all that bad. Kind of coming back to life, bouncing off the 50-day. It's been doing it. It's bounced off the 50-day once, twice, 3 times. Stocks in uptrends, the 50-day is, normally a pretty reliable spot in an uptrend to try and get involved. So, just kind of looking around, I thought BMNR had a nice little day, obviously because of Ethereum. Even your MSTR just stopped selling off for a day. I don't really think that name's buyable while it's living under the 200. But, Bitcoin was acting well. So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to be too negative on the market here when things continue to look pretty great. Obviously, there is a name like SNDK that this thing has gotten, probably quite short-term extended. STX, probably quite short-term extended. WDC, another one where you might say, quite short-term extended. But ultimately, this is the kind of power that you want to see from your market. I don't want to complain. I want to be in stuff like that. IONQ, another one, just absolutely awesome power from that $42 level. You're talking a $20 move for a $40 stock. I mean, that's just awesome. 50% move. I mean, who wouldn't want to be in something like that? BABA, another one, another theme, just continues to be an absolute leader. And you look at the weekly on this thing, and you could go, hey, you know what? This thing might just be literally getting started. So there seems to be places where money is going. Whether it's and recently again, gold, another all-time high today. Silver sold off just a touch, nothing really wrong with it. There are some energy names. If you're looking at a DK, looked really, really great today. Adino looked, continues to look really nice. I think CVX continues to have a super weekly, beautiful weekly setup. You just again, it's a little sloppy. It's a little sloppy here. But and obviously a little bit slow, but this weekly base is just huge. So there still feels like there's gonna be money rotating. It's gonna rotate somewhere. It's just a healthy bull market. You kind of have to try and not necessarily get one step ahead of the rotation. Just let the stocks, let clean technical setups, look at stocks in clean groups. But when you catch a group of stocks that are all acting well together, MPC. And you could kind of look at these dailies, an MPC, VL, it's starting to base above the 200, tighten up. VLO, similar deal, get above the 200, tighten up. We've just looked at Dino. These names are acting well. So when a group of stocks start to act well, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stocks, that is going to kind of lift them up the ranks in terms of by the time you go to look at them on your 1 month, 3 month relative strength scan, they'll be sitting there. But ultimately, outside of my CCJ, I still think OKLO did really well today. Again, maybe not the most reputable company. Maybe they don't make a ton of money, what have you. But it's just another theme that's working. Quantum's a theme that's working. Maybe cryptos want to come back to life. Look at how absolutely strong, your iron of the world has been. Look at this thing. Wolf has been another one that's been super strong. Today I kind of noticed today I noticed Mara was starting to pick up some steam. I've been noticing, and this thing, ripped above the 200-day on a big pickup in volume. Look at what BidF has been doing. I mean, this thing is just a absolute monster on a huge pickup. And when you see a huge pickup in volume like this, it kind of reminds me of Cypher, right? Where it's like all of a sudden it gets above the 200 and you go, what the hell is going on in here? Where it just has this insane pickup in like out of nowhere, 25 million shares to 70 to 70 to 70 to 70 into 90. That's kind of BidF like what's going on here. So there's just a bunch of evidence of groups just turning up and working. Riot being another one. So I don't want to argue with the sheer amount of strength and just a crazy amount of groups that are working. You kind of got to learn to categorize everything in your mind. Like, these things are moving together. These things are moving together. If they get a little bit too extended, you maybe know that you can cool away from that group for a little bit. But if they pull back into their ascending moving averages and then they all start to turn back up together, that makes for like a pretty high conviction setup that, hey, not only does it have, an uptrending clean technicals, they're all moving together as a group and they're all finding support at rising moving averages. That kind of makes, buying the dip against the 20-day a whole lot easier. So ultimately, I think it's a good environment. I'm not going to argue with it. My portfolio is still performing really well. Even my CCL, it's just, kind of basing here. I don't think it's doing anything wrong. My PDD just started to pick up a little bit today, and I bought this thing, 122s. Obviously, Tesla continues to be a monster. I did reduce half my position in CCJ. There's no excuse for my stocks to be acting poor, and I don't hold on to them. Unfortunately, they came for my AOI position today, and I wasn't going to argue with it. You took out yesterday's lows, and I had no choice. I almost rebought this thing as a 620 setup right in here, roughly, but I didn't. I kind of just let it go, and it ended up closing really well. Unfortunately, they shook me out. I'll still be looking for a spot on this thing, but we'll see with FOMC tomorrow if I can get situated. I still have MP, and they did have some pretty decent catalyst this morning, but all of these pops recently, if we just zoom out a little bit, all of these pops have basically been spots to fade, but it is kind of just dragging its ass higher. If it wants to go, great. If it doesn't, I'll eventually get stopped out for peanuts or a flat trade. No big deal. Palantir, I think it looks perfectly fine. We'll see if this thing wants to go ahead and start to take out that 171.5 level, and then like I mentioned, OKLO, just absolutely fantastic. And there are still stocks out there that I think act great. KTOS was on my radar as this little bit of a bull flag breakout a few days ago at 66.5. No, I didn't take it. Kind of sucks, right? Looking at it today, it's like, dang, you'd be up 10 points. And even when this thing was kind of moving, I was like, wouldn't be too surprised we see this thing at 80. In a good market tomorrow, we're probably at 80. They are kind of like one of your leaders in that drone space. And even names, like they're getting offerings and they're getting bought right back up. RCAP being one of those that I noticed today. They did an offering and then right back up. The one that kind of got its ass kicked on an offering was Rocket Lab. But, that's just kind of the market, right? This is like your CCJ. You think it's coming out of a base, and then it just completely fails on a pickup in volume. Does it continue to hold the 50-day as it's done here before? I have no idea if it will come back into the 50-day and then hold there. But, I personally, I didn't own it, but there's just, for some people, there's just no time for crappy acting stocks in a ripping bull market, which is kind of exactly what we're in. Tomorrow we'll get a little bit more info on what the market wants to do really the rest of this week. Does the market need a bit of a breather? I think today was like the first down day for the QQQ in like the last, 7-8 days or something like that. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, it's been, just a steady march higher for days on end. So it's been very nice. And we'll just kind of see what the market brings tomorrow. But ultimately, I think things are still looking pretty good. I still think the market acts well. And I don't really want to guess what is going to happen tomorrow. Just kind of have to manage the open positions and then, really dig through the market tonight and see if there's like any extra stocks out there that aren't already on my radar, to potentially execute on. But ultimately, it looks like the market's acting well, and I wouldn't be too surprised if we're looking at higher by year end. So, hopefully you guys are trading well, and I will see you guys all for pre-market prep. Cheers.